Okay, we're now looking at the 4200 series, which is semi-opaque, transparent and fluorescence. The first thing I want to establish is the fact that base coat sealer dark is not black. That's why we call it base coat sealer dark. I've sprayed this panel in base coat sealer dark, and now I'm spraying half of it with just one very light coat of semi-opaque deep black, and you can see the contrast. So if your customer wants black or you need a black, the base coat sealer dark is not sufficient. You will have to go over it with deep black. I'm just going to show you a fairly quick and easy design here using the semi-opaques and transparents. This is a practice item that we use in our classes. In this case it just happens to be a guitar body, and I'm laying down 3mm fine line tape, or 1/8 of an inch. I'm just putting some 2-inch masking tape over the top, and I'm going to cut directly on top of that with my 10A scalpel. I'm actually cutting on top of the fine line tape and just weeding out the paper, and now continue with my design with again 2-inch masking tape. I could use the AutoAir masking film, but this is quite a small area, so it's just as handy to lay down some 2-inch tape. Taking my pencil now, and I'm just beginning to draw the design directly on top of the masking tape. When I'm happy with the design, I'm just going to cut again directly on top of the base coat sealer white. This paint's literally only 10 minutes old at this stage. No worries about product failures here. The paint's going to be fine as long as I've completely cured it with that heat gun. Just weed everything out, and now I'm going to mask it up. You see me cut my designs and drawing directly onto the masking film. It also has another use. What I'm doing here is I'm simply using it as a very, very cheap, fast and effective form of masking paper. Coming in with my SATA Mini Jet 4, 0.8 setup, 40 psi, everything wide open, and I'm using semi-opaque, bright blue. Look how far back my gun is, guys. We don't want this stuff to get wet. Just dust it on there in that first coat. And now I'm on my third coat, complete coverage. I'm just doing a reverse mask now, and I'm coming in with the flame red that you saw me earlier mixing up with 10% 4011 reducer. And again, you know the drill by now, just 3 nice light coats. What I've done, guys, I've reverse masked it now, and I'm starting to put the shadow in. I'm using a 0.5 airbrush, and I'm using transparent black. I've put 10% reducer in just out of force of habit, but technically for something this size with no detail, I could have used the transparent black straight out of the bottle. I just take the masking off and being a little bit more accurate here. Still only a few drops of reducer in here. It's not exactly detailed. And what I'm doing is I'm coming in with transparent white. Again with the same 4011 reducer mix. Just be careful of white, guys. Everybody worries about black. White will desaturate your color, so I'm just using a tiny, tiny amount of transparent white over the design to give the desired effect. And that's pretty much it. Very, very quick and easy graphic using the semi-opaque and transparents. We're going to come back to this panel a little bit later on. Now the transparents are the paints that I use mostly on my classes. The reason for that is they're so easy to use. They're pretty much ready to go straight out of the bottle. My students find it very, very easy to work with. The paints mill ground a little bit further, a bit more refined, so they'll go through a 0.5 or a 0.3 airbrush. If I'm using it on a big scale like this, I tend to just use it straight out of the bottle. As I say, if I'm wanting finer detail or better atomization, just literally stick 10-20% reducer in there. And you can see I'm really lashing the paint on here, but it's barely registering. That's because they're so transparent. If you are going to do finer detail, finer airbrushing, we recommend you go up to 30% reducer. The truth is, I have to confess, sometimes I go even beyond that. If I'm going really fine, I've run maybe 30, even 40%, 40-11 reducer, and this is just transparent white with the 30 or 40% mix. A lot of people say you can't detail with AutoAir. I'm sure you've all read it on the forums. I don't really know what to say. I think what they mean is they can't detail with AutoAir. Okay, next up we're going to look at fluorescents, which are a notoriously transparent paint. I'm using 10% 40-11 reducer here, and I'm putting it on a little bit wet, and already I'm in big trouble. You can see the fisheye starting to appear. Now this is not silicone. What it is, it's pigment migration. It's the transparent paint washing around in the binder, and it's the paint's way of telling me that I'm putting it on far too wet. We definitely don't want this scenario, so what I'm doing is I'm actually screwing in the fluid adjustment valve, and on my fluorescents I do not use 40-11 reducer. I shoot them straight out of the bottle with the fluid adjustment valve in. I'm still using the same amount of air. The paint's still travelling at the same speed, there just simply is not as much paint in ratio to air. Therefore I'm much less likely to get pigment migration. Get those first couple of coats on light, especially with the transparent. And once we've got those first couple of coats down, we can be a little bit more aggressive now. Again, not soaking them, but starting to put them on a little bit wetter. With the fluorescents, they're notoriously transparent, so it could take maybe 5 or 6 coats to reach a sealing coat to get the desired effect. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to get seamless fades using transparents. Well, basically any paint. What I'm doing here is I'm using fluorescent red. It looks red in my gun, and it looks like it's red when it's travelling through the air. However, when it hits the panel, it actually comes up orange. Obviously, that's what happens when you mix yellow and red, you get orange. So at this stage, I'm only getting a 2-colour fade, despite the fact that I'm using fluorescent red. However, if I keep going and keep going, make multiple passes, eventually the panel is going to turn red. But by that stage I will have a completely seamless fade from yellow into orange into red. Guys, if you do this, keep that fluid adjustment valve in, keep it light coats, multiple passes, I promise you, you will get absolutely seamless fades even on your very first go.